Hello, everyone. I am Lauren Hall, owner of Modern Day Hypnosis, and thank you so much for joining me today, where I'm going to be interviewing a real shaman, Carol Asaighi. And I've met Carol just a few times online, never in person, and it always feels so real. I was thinking I had met her already in person, but I'm remembering it's only been in this digital interspace. So even though you're watching us digitally, I hope you will feel like we are hanging out with you live in real time. So stay tuned. Carol's coming on soon. Good morning.
Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's great to see you.
Good to see you. I want your picture bigger so I can have you in my space. You look amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I was just thinking that, like, oh yeah, and all those times that you and I have hung out in person, and like we've never been in person.
I know, isn't it funny? I know. Oh, should I not have a thing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. And we will hang out in person. That's going to be maybe one of our goals for this year. Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I'm Lauren, owner of Modern Day Hypnosis, and I have an amazing guest with me, Carol. Introduce yourself, please, and welcome.
Hi, I'm Carol Asaighi. I'm a shamanic practitioner. I've been studying and practicing shamanism for about 25 years now or more. But my first career was as a fashion designer in New York City, and I did that simultaneously. And while I was doing that and seeking and studying, I became an interfaith minister after September 11th, and I graduated in 2003. And then in recent years, I went back to the interfaith seminary and became an interspiritual counselor, which I really love. And so now my career focus and my time and energy is on shamanism and the healing art of shamanism and spiritual counseling and teaching.
And it sounds like, for what we've talked about too, Carol, is you continue to refine and learn and experience, from different mentors or faiths of employing these opportunities. And we'll get into that in just a second, but tell me more about your journey to here.
Yeah. Well, I think like so many people, I remember being magical as a child or feeling magic as a child. And I think, sadly, that's something that our culture and society had kind of talked us out of, especially if you were meant to get into a traditional kind of life, traditional church life or something, not that is negative, but it can kind of shut down this ability to have imaginary friends and talk to the trees and the animals. So I do remember being that kind of a kid. And also really loving church and I felt like I wanted to be a priest and not a nun, but a priest and things like this. But it wasn't until my 20s, and the first book I read, a spiritual book, was, Shaki Gawain, You Can Heal Your Life, or was that Louise L. Hay? Yes, Shaki Gawain was the first book I read, but Seth Speaks. So there was this woman in New York in the 70s who channeled an entity named Seth, and he wrote several books through her. And he was not embodied, but his books were really spiritual teachings. And one of the things he taught was that spirit is always trying to communicate with us, and that we can see and look for these signs in our life. So while I was reading this book, I started to look and see these signs. I started to see feathers everywhere. And as I walked from my little studio apartment to the subway every day, feathers would be underneath my feet. And then we could say coincidentally, but I don't believe really in coincidences so much. I went to Juneau, Alaska to visit a college friend. And she had a radio show on the little Juneau radio station with this, what turned out to be an Eskimo or Tlingit medicine man. She didn't even know he was a medicine man. And when he met me, he said, I have to have ceremony for you. Now at 27, I was kind of suspicious. I didn't know what this meant, but I also felt energized. So I didn't actually agree necessarily, but he called the next day, my friend, and he said, tell your friend to start fasting. So I said, okay, I'm doing this. We're doing this. And what he did when we met, and there were other Tlingit people who came, it was such a huge honor, is he taught me how Native people pray. And how Native people pray is they first zoom out to the whole entire universe with gratitude to the cosmos and the stars and all the beings out there. And then they slowly make their way in and thanking all the animals of the sea and all the animals of the land, and then their community, their state, their home, their family, and then themselves. And he was really initiating me because he was empowering me with this very treasured wisdom. And at the end of that, it took hours ceremony, I asked him, I said, you know, I've been having this vision of seeing feathers everywhere. Do you think it's okay if I go down to the ocean and get myself a feather to commemorate this? And he picked up his eagle feathers that his medicine man had gifted to him. And he said, these are yours. And you can go to any ceremony of Native people in North America. And when the medicine man stand up, you should stand up.
Wow. That you were anointed and officially.
Yes, so that was really my first initiation. But you know, being a Westerner and raised in our culture, I didn't really understand even what he saw in me. So what is also kind of common is it took me getting ill, and I got chronic fatigue in my early 30s. And that's what they, you know, it's kind of a garbage can diagnosis. And I had to leave my fashion job. But it was really perfect timing, of course, because I thought I have to now understand what he saw in me. And it's time for me to understand what this gift means. And I was doing small things for friends, you know, clearing their spaces and welcoming their babies. And in the time off, I went into a bookstore and I prayed, and I do pray, and I believe in prayer. And I asked God to tell me what book to read. And the book was by Hank Wesselman, an anthropologist. And it was about his own direct experience with mystical higher intelligence and his own higher self, based in Hawaii. So it was more based on the Hawaiian culture. And as I read this book, I had this feeling I'm going to be his friend. And I thought, you know, I have like thoughts that come into my head, and I thought, that's kind of audacious to even assume that. But, you know, I was single, and I was single for a long time. And so I thought, well, you know, it's my money. I don't have anyone responsible to me. I'm going to go to Hawaii. You know, I'm not working. This will help me feel better. So I did. And I met Hank and his beautiful wife, Jill. And he taught core shamanism originally based on the teaching of Michael Harner. So mostly in our culture, Westerners learn this is an ancient tool for accessing wisdom within ourselves that humans have used for millennia, using a monotonous beat of a drum or dance or a rattle, or even, you know, I often use ocean waves with a client if they can't handle the intensity of a drum, because as you know, it puts the brain into theta wave. And when we can relax the mind, then we can open to expanded states of perception and our magic. So Hank, being an anthropologist, meant that for his career, he had studied Indigenous people and medicine men, and then he started to have his own spontaneous experiences. And Michael Harner, who was the founder of the Foundation of Shamanic Studies, was very similar. He was an anthropologist who studied indigenous people and started to have his own spontaneous experiences. And I don't think that taking on this tradition is appropriation, and in this sense that it resonated with me. For whatever reason, it works and it resonates with me. But also, if I go far enough back in my own personal ancestry, somewhere I have a druid or somebody, who communicated with nature in this way. But also, I liken it to so many people went to India, let's say in the 70s, and studied yoga, which is a spiritual practice. It's a body, mind, spiritual practice. And now we've got yoga studios all over the place. And we have Westerners teaching a Hindu tradition. So, I think many ancient traditions are coming to the fore so that we can kind of balance or merge our spiritual practices with ancient wisdom, with indigenous wisdom, modern technology, modern wisdom, and hopefully move all of us forward.
Yeah, that's the opportunity that I sense, which is here, and so many completely, practical, approachable, real people like yourself who never intended to be in this world. But, why not? As a kid, it was calling you, and, maybe all of us have those louder callings. They're just not as, maybe obvious or invitational as yours were.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what are spontaneous experiences? I mean, do you have those? Do we all have those?
Well, I did, I do. But now I have, I'd say, skills or self-mastery or a level of, but it still does happen, a level of like consciousness around, now I'm going to have an experience with spirit. So it doesn't always surprise me as much. But when I started to read Hank's book called Spirit Walker, I all of a sudden had a vision of a rather large, very large, he looked Native American man, and he was bare chested with a red skirt, and he had like a pattern around the red skirt. I mean, I saw him very vividly. I mean, I'm a visual person, but I did see him and I could feel him. And he started walking with me to the subway, and I felt him like as imaginary friend, but real. And he had hair all down his back. And in fact, it felt like a great protector. And I liked him. I didn't feel afraid of this energy, and I could see him very clearly in my mind's eye and feel his presence. And one day he was like standing in front of me. I was sitting down on the subway, and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Immovable Strength."
So you could hear him audibly?
I heard it in my mind, in my ear, he said, "My name is Immovable Strength." And so that was kind of a spontaneous experience because I didn't necessarily invite him. But the fact that I said yes to studying and yes on that path, he made himself known to me. And then on that first trip to Hawaii, Hank had invited a Hawaiian elder named Hale Makua. And Hale Makua came to our class. And the day of that class, it was a Monday. It was the very first day of my very first class. It was like unbelievable. And I, that morning, got up early. I had jet lag, and I had already started to study shamanism. So I called in my power animal. And then I felt that man come into me. And I felt myself as a man. I felt my posture change. I just could feel his whole being merging with me. And actually, that's the only time and the first time that's ever happened. And when I went to class, I felt that I was him. And I asked the Hawaiian elder, he was with me the whole morning, and the Hawaiian elder kind of lectured or gave us storytelling and teaching the whole morning. I went over to the Hawaiian elder and I said, "What's happening to me? What is this?" And he said, "This is your Makua." Now that word in Hawaiian translates as from the parent, capital A, capital M. So from the big parent, meaning this was part of my soul. This was part of my soul complex. This was possibly, if you think in these terms, me in a past life coming through to remind me who I was and who I am.
This is so interesting. And you're so great at explaining it. I mean, you really make it visual, or experiential for me too. And it's inspiring to be shown that there are these bigger things literally right around us. And if we can maybe slow down and be connected or present to them.
Especially that they want to help and support us.
Mm-hmm.
And, I went into like a gift shop in a hotel that week and I saw the pattern on this guy's skirt on a Hawaiian quilt. And I said, oh, he's Hawaiian. That's why he doesn't have a shirt on, he's Hawaiian. But, in this philosophy, spirit doesn't just come unless we're, in my experience now working with clients, unless we're in some kind of grave danger or deep sorrow or needing really strong help. Spirit doesn't want to kind of mess with our free will. So we have all this wonderful support, but we do have to invite it. And inviting it can be, please help me, or thank you, or I don't know what to do today. I mean, I do that in my meditations, or I don't know how to solve this problem. And that is prayer and also speaking to God, but also speaking with, our own team, because how I perceive it is everyone has a team.
Yeah.
We don't come in here all by ourselves, although it feels very lonely at times.
Yeah, and maybe that sense of forgetting is an opportunity for us, in our egos to feel all this accomplishment to get ourselves over things. But of course, if we ever feel stuck or incapable, we can lean on that bigger access to energy.
Yes, and Hank always told a funny story. Him and Hale Makua became very close friends. And he would say we used to call him just Makua, why is everyone forgetting? And Makua said, no, they're not forgetting. They just have to remember.
Yeah, the
very
riddle.
indigenous way of saying it.
So you were, sounding like you had a practice or discipline of prayer, right? And as these signs became more and more sort of loud or clear, did you ever, hear from the outside world, maybe like the skeptics, that you shouldn't feel that way? I mean, were any people trying to make you believe what they believed?
Well, I have to say my own mother, and I think the generations before us, my mother was very psychic, and this is part of a skill that comes in with this. But she was afraid of it, and often when people have, let's say, another sense, it might only present itself when you see your grandmother that's passed. And so then you become afraid of this like other knowing because you haven't fully developed it in, we could say, the positive polarity or positive experiences. But my own mother would have visions and dreams, and then she would get really afraid of them. And I remember really when I left New York, 6 years ago and said, I'm going to do this full time. She's like, who do you think you are? The Long Island medium? Although she watched the Long Island medium religiously, so she bought into it, but it scared her. She felt like, am I going against God? And the truth is no, because this isn't a religion. There's nothing to go against. It's really, it's actually God-given is how it feels to me. God and spirit want to communicate. God, whatever your understanding of that is. And, Hale Makua taught us we are all gods and we are gods in becoming. We are part of God. And I was raised Catholic. You could call that the Holy Spirit, our own inner knowing. So also we have ancestors, our own biological ancestors. And yeah, some may be in distortion or unhealthy, but there definitely are those that want to help us. And that happens commonly where you feel a grandmother's dream, or grandmother come through you in a dream. And so in this sense, I think it's our birthright to feel our own spirit.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I had a very interesting experience last year doing a journey for myself, and I was journeying to my soul, my immortal oversoul. And what I heard was really, I have a great relationship with my husband, and we don't have children, but I love my dog like a child.
Mhm.
And but what I heard is really the most important relationship to develop is with me, your higher self. You
Mhm.
can love your husband, you can love your dog, but the most important relationship to keep working on, because that's my source of life, really. And in intuition and synchronicities and help.
That's powerful. And would would you say that this is the intention you have in holding space and working with people, is helping them, forge or further develop that relationship to self and the expansion of self, ancestors and all?
Absolutely. And sometimes I call it an introduction. Like, I'm going to introduce you to those, and almost everybody knows. If I say, I see a grandmother here, or a great aunt, or sometimes we have like a great aunt who never got married, and who let's say if it's a woman and had a career, and she's coming through to say it's okay for you to have a career. It's just like a relief. But the most important thing about the work I do is that it's empowering for the client, and that I'm kind of passing the baton after the session for them to take it up, to start to communicate with their own higher self. And if there's parts of themselves that have had trauma, and for that, in shamanism, we call it soul retrieval work, where I ask for that energy that may have left or broken off or been heartbroken to return, then it's the client's responsibility to welcome that part. Let's say a 4-year-old who had been really frightened or yelled at or neglected in some way. Then it's your homework is to reconnect with your 4-year-old self and bring your own soul parts back. And so for that reason, I often don't encourage clients to see me again. I'm not the typical, it's not a business model, it's definitely a spiritual model. So I'd say don't see me before at least 3 months, but unless something acute happens. And clients who are repeat clients see me about once a year, like a tune-up, or there's layers, there's layers of what's happening. And then often I'm guided, depending on the client, to teach them how to connect to their own higher self.
I
Because
love,
that's not something that we all learn how to do in our culture and Western society. So that's also an act of empowerment. And so, but being with another, holding that space for them, like, you're safe, you're okay, I'm right here, and we're going to do this together, and you can do this. Kind of can start them on a path. And then, I have been working based on Hank Wesselman and Jill Kuykendall. That's my main teachers. Based on the wisdom that they've shared, I do have, about 8 courses that I do teach if someone wants to learn more about that particular philosophy, but that's not required, but it is fun.
yeah, I loved what you'd said about it's the spiritual model, not necessarily a business sense of, okay, you're my client now and you're going to keep getting this product or service from me. It's an invitation, for them to step into a non, religious oriented, but a very spiritually fulfilling um, expansion.
And even to that end, I have often on occasion seen Jesus or felt the presence of Jesus and told the client that Jesus is with you and he loves you. And mostly it's around forgiveness, unconditional love, and healing. And it feels like an energy, an energy of love that the man who was named Jesus can bring into a healing session. Or even, I call it the Mary Trinity, because I see it as the Virgin Mary, Mary Magdalene, and the goddess Isis. They seem to hold a trinity from what I see. And but one or the other sometimes comes through. So yeah, spirit speaks to us how we can understand it.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the
I
clean.
mean, I've seen spirit come through as Batman, So it's all however the client or myself can understand it. For myself, I see my own higher self often as Glenda the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz. Because she comes down in that iridescent globe and she always says, you were home all along, and this warm. And when I was a kid, I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And so it's this warm, unconditional, loving presence that everything's okay no matter where you are.
I'll comment that yes, you do bring that energy, which is why I feel already like we've spent, so much time in physical space together. It just feels safe. Maybe because you have that strength that you get to lean on.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah. I think this point about, the context is an individual experience is really a very relatable way of understanding that those signs that come in and are already in your life are there for you specifically. And the way I would explain it for hypnotism is that, you've already created a trance in your mind and you've got these conditions that you don't even realize are, presets of societal beliefs or old stories that you've told yourself or that you've accepted. And it's really, not anything you have to believe about. You already are hypnotized. It's just, do you feel that you already have now what you want? Do you feel safe? And do you feel loved by God and life and your higher self? Do you have that rapport, or do you feel a little bit of shame and or anger about some of the stuff that you may have wanted that didn't go, your way?
Yes.
So you help heal those conscious or unconscious stories for people.
Yeah.
And then you're teaching other people these courses. Are you holding ceremony for other shamans?
No, not yet. But I love this idea. I mean, before COVID, I was doing a monthly, what we call drumming circle in my property in Asheville, North Carolina. We have a chapel in our backyard, a 420 square foot chapel. And I was going to say about the size of the studio I lived in for 17 years in Brooklyn, so I guess up leveled in this way. But a drumming circle in this tradition is not where you just get together and drum. You do drum, but it's where you have a purpose of journeying to access more information for yourself. So I was doing that for those who wanted to attend locally and live. And that's a discipline too. Yeah.
Well, I think that would be such an experience for people to come together in that safe space, and do that as a group.
And it's so fun, you always end up feeling when you connect to your own higher self, you just feel so much more joy. And then when you're there for others and witnessing others, it can be very profoundly powerful, which may take, you may want to reflect. But the joy of being connected to your higher self in community, I think that's the direction we're all headed. I really do. And we could call that, in a way, a non-dual existence, meaning, non-dual from our own spirit, really transcending the world of good and bad into from horizontal to vertical, really having a non-dual awareness as much of your life and your day as you can.
Yeah, when you're saying non-dual, I was thinking about like your denser self, right? Maybe your unaware self, and then this higher self. And then non-dual is sort of like you have this range you could exist on, and then there's all these other souls or maybe identities that are experiencing along with you. And how much, community is that? It's such a good heart feeling.
Yes, and I think some of the challenges we face in our culture is we're very like codependent, and we're almost encouraged. And I myself too, have become aware of like feeling into my husband's energy. And I have to kind of pull myself back and be like, okay, he's got his own team. He's got his own spirit guides. I may be having a feeling, but I don't have to like extend my energy over there to check out what's going on. And that's, that was my own trauma, as I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, and I was hypervigilant my whole life. And so it's not uncommon that I would want to try to, make sure that everything's okay in my environment. But as I'm getting older, of course, and hopefully wiser, that's not in my or my husband's or anyone's best interest for me to merge energetically.
Yeah,
but it's unconscious, so I have to bring consciousness to it.
Well, and it's exactly, awareness is always step one of all of us could be out there in this unconscious codependence to something, our addictions, our stories, our wounds. And so if we're willing to lean into that non-ending support, there's nothing we can't do. And I think, to me, that really speaks to this time that we're in, this time of very evolved sort of collective consciousness, right? We have all these opportunities with resources and technology. I mean, we can globally sort of share messages, but people feel afraid or alone, or maybe insignificant. I think this is the best time for people to wake up and no longer be, afraid or confused about these ancient modalities that have been there, holding space and providing support.
Yes. And that's what your work does too. I've experienced your work, and that's helping us uncouple from those unconscious thought patterns so that we can, from my, sorry, that's my dog. From my perspective, expand into all of the power. Yes.
All right. He wants to join in soon. We'll wrap up soon, but do you have any last message that you would want someone out there that's listening to understand that maybe they could experience this themselves or start doing this themselves if they feel called?
Yes, I think, we're in a culture of where we do a lot on our own, and we think we need to do a lot on our own. I think the internet has a lot of wonderful attributes, but it's kind of taught us to figure everything out on our own, and to reach out to support, to reach out to trusted practitioners. That's what we're here for. We're meant to be in community. God or spirit didn't just put one human on the planet. And so we need each other to help remind each other that we have this greater, we could say superpower, so to speak, of love and wisdom available to us. And I know it doesn't always jive with what we see on the outside world, pain and suffering. But our role is to take responsibility for who we are. And as Hallie Makua said, you have to know who you are and where you are. And that's a big job. So don't ever feel that it's a weakness to call on help. And then at the same time, use your own intuition to really discern that. And when clients are very happy with a session with me, I say, bravo, you found the right person for you. And I was that person, and I'm honored to be that person, but you listen to what felt right for you. So I think there is a lot of help and support, both in the physical and the non-physical, and it's all real.
Well, I really liked what you said about it not being a weakness to call on that help. It's like they're here wanting to help you. And I'm only saying this here because I'm remembering our experience, and you started with the directions of sort of, calling everybody from all realms. And it was so it made me feel, Carol, like I was the center of the universe. And maybe I am the center of my universe.
Yes, you are. Wonderful.
Yeah. So it was for sure, life-changing, or I'll say energy expanding, to have that that support brought in at such a visceral way. So I'm really grateful to have had the chance to work with you. And I know anyone that finds their path headed towards you is really grateful. And, right now you're not even seeing new clients. You've got your full calendar, but you do have these courses that people could check out, and maybe some of them coming.
Yeah, I'm working on it. So yes, they could get on a mailing list, and hopefully by the summer I'll, to be taking new clients again too. I have to be in balance. And I think that's something I'm hearing from a lot of healers now, that we need a lot of downtime, and probably just everybody, because, we need to be gentle with ourselves about how much energy we can expend and hold, and be real about it. Yeah.
That is one last thing I wanted to ask, because I expect anybody who's watching this is already, maybe open or interested, or maybe feeling some things themselves. What advice could you give to people? How can intuitive people start recognizing that signal of, they need to rebalance? They've taken on too much of other people's space.
Yes, well, I do it in multiple ways. Often one day a week, and this is kind of an old tradition of keeping a Sabbath. I have to really rest, like seriously rest, like not really even house clean, or maybe I go on a hike, but just and be very quiet. I've noticed I've had to be very quiet on those days, so not chatty, and let myself go back into stasis and recharge. But when I get even more overwhelmed, I reach out to other practitioners who I trust and admire and respect. Sometimes I can't call my energy back, but that is something that we can all do, is ask for, any energy that may be out there in the ethers to return. And Jill Kuykendall recommends we say that every night: return all my soul parts to my body. And having a community of others to reach out to. So if I'm really kind of stuck, I can reach out to other practitioners to help me get unstuck. Eating better, resting, being gentle, being in nature, those are all the things. Taking some time, and it's challenging because we all want to be there for everybody. We want to show up all the time, but I've learned I have to take time.
Well, like you're saying, taking the Sabbath. How ancient is that, instruction and recipe? So we're very supported as a species to have this real ancient knowledge that is, right here in our everyday language. And so it's, what I'll tell people, it's not about knowing it, it's about doing it. Because if you're just knowing it, then you're just up here. You're like in this spaceship, sort of looking down at this idea of having a life where I want this thing off or landed, so that you could be here and feel that support.
Yes.
Thank you, Carol, so much for your time.
Lauren, it's so nice to spend this time with you. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate you sharing this this message in your story. It's beautiful. Your energy is just it's very nice. I've really enjoyed. So thank you. All right, carolasaighi.com. I will put everything in the link. Check her out, and we'll be back soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.